Maybe you've never heard this before, but the basics of the basic of the basic of how to apply ki in daily life, the super kaisho, is learning how to get up, learning how to sleep, and learning to take responsibility for not only your conscious mind, but also your subconscious mind. Over time, it's possible to transform your subconscious mind. It didn't get put there by the boogeyman. It is a product of your past experience. So we're going to try to keep this to 45 minutes today, and I'm sure our topic will spill over. But during that last meeting, the purpose was just to let's hear each other. Let's understand the significance of the impact that we're all going through. So if you weren't on that call, I asked each person to answer 4 questions. The first 2 were very simple. Just state your name and where you're calling in from in case we didn't know you. And then the third question was, what's changed in your life and how are you using key principles to that end? And then the 4th question was, what are you grateful for today? And that was very informative, just to hear everyone, go through that focus where we could connect and understand what each person is going through. I got a lot out of it, so thank you. I had planned to talk a little bit in these times about Toi Sensei's teaching that, as I said in the last call, I referenced the first 3 chapters in part 2 of Ki in Daily Life. But it was more important that we hear from everyone. And as I said, it took an hour and a half, so we didn't talk about that material at all. So to the extent that I'm able to summarize here in the next 25 minutes, some of that material, I'd like to just share some different perspectives that Toi Sensei might offer us at this time. So let me first acknowledge what I heard, which is we're all going through a real significant change. Self-quarantine means in our own home here, Ileana and I went from an empty nesters to taking on 4 grown kids. So there's 6 of us all together and we can't leave. So it's an adjustment that if we all look in the mirror, it's pretty real. And if you find yourself getting a little bit short, it's totally understandable. So I thought to myself, all right, we're in this time of stress. How can we utilize our teaching? The first reaction, and I think this is happening around the world, is people think, oh, I know. Let's do a class in breathing and meditation because everyone's under stress. We can maintain our physical distancing and we can do breathing and meditation. And I only thought about that for about 2 seconds and it just didn't feel right because I knew there was something more important. And what I came to was go back to the basics, David. Toi Sensei would always say, go back to the basics. Well, I thought, what are the basics in this case? If like last November, at our intensive, we talked a lot about kaisho. The basic of every art is kaisho. You just have to know the kaisho, and then gyosho, and then sosho, like years and years later. But what about this ki in daily life? Have you ever thought about what's the kaisho of ki in daily life? Well, Toi Sensei tells us what the kaisho is in ki in daily life. In fact, it's the basic of the basics. And I don't think I've ever taught this as specifically as I'm going to at least glance over it here today. So let's review where we are. The media says we're in lockdown. Last week I said, you could reframe that. Lockdown sounds terrible. What if you just said, let's be grounded. Let's rethink this and say, okay, we're all grounded. What can we do with this? In fact, how can we turn grounded into being a gift? So what would that look like? Well, think about this. When we go on retreat, like an immersion experience or an intensive, or when we go to Japan to Kinosato, to our headquarters in Tochigi, it's 24/7. And we all go there with the idea of emptying your cup, and you have the benefit of a completely different environment. 24/7, you're in a different country, you're training, it's a different diet, you're not addicted to your social media. I have a friend, a biologist, geneticist, who was scheduled to go on a 3-day retreat, a silent retreat, a meditation retreat in Asheville, North Carolina, but they canceled the retreat because of the social distancing, but they did the whole 3-day retreat online. So imagine a silent retreat where the participants are now at home and all of their family has to adjust to this idea that one of the family members is going through this 24/7 immersion experience on this retreat. It's the same thing if you're a Nuchideshi. Toi Sensei owns you 24/7. It's the same thing how Las Vegas constructs its architecture. So when you go in, you lose track of day and night because there are no windows in the casinos. Every February, most of you know, I do this Platinum Partnership seminar for a week with Tony Robbins. And that's also an immersion experience because he keeps people going and he owns them 24/7. And that can be really conducive to evaluating yourself and your situation because the environment is so totally different. Like right now, our rhythms are turned upside down. So how can we turn that around and use it as a gift? Okay. Well, a gift for what? What about taking this as an opportunity to take your ability to notice your state? Are you keeping one point? Are you unifying your mind and body? Or are you not? As Kaicho Shinichi Tohei teaches us, and he's famous for saying this now again and again, if you can experience the difference, you can self-correct. Okay, can you experience the difference of this whole new rhythm that this kind of quarantine has created for ourselves? You can't help but notice everything about your daily life is probably different. So that can be an advantage for you asking yourself, am I really maintaining unification of mind and body in daily life? So what would it mean to turn this into this kind of opportunity for personal growth? Well, Toi Sensei's given us more than a hint, but what you might not know is the second half of Key in Daily Life. The first half is on key principles. You know, how can you share the experience of unification of mind and body? So the first half of Key in Daily Life is teaching the 4 basic principles. But then he enters this whole new part 2 called The Way of Life, Applying Key Principles. And Toi Sensei, being as logical as he always is, he starts out with getting up. Well, you might think, oh, when should you start unifying your mind and body during the day? Well, we could all say, oh, getting up. And so we might think that's why Toi Sensei said getting up. But that's not really true. What he's giving us is these 3 sections: getting up, the next chapter on sleep, and the next chapter on your subconscious mind. So let me review this kind of noticing for a second and make it simpler. What's something that we're asked to notice right now? Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Physical distancing. Maintain, 2 meters. But what if you started noticing as soon as you got up? So, for example, examine reflexively how you get up. What are the first things that go through your mind when you get up? For many of us, we get up and we don't just spring out of bed ready to go. You lay there, you kind of wonder, what day is it? What time is it? What do I have to do? And Toi Sensei sees that as not extending ki. It's being very hesitant and confused. And in the readings that you said, he even called it weak ki. So how do you get up in the morning with a spring in your step? Well, it starts the night before, which is why he's going to talk about sleeping. So let me take a little segue here to indicate why this is the basic of the basic of the basics. So you see the key behind me, and you've heard me talk about this. The character is made up of three things that refer to food, air, and water. So when Toi Sensei talks about what are the things you need to live, it's food, air, and water. Those are three things. And then most people would also add clothing and shelter. So famously, people say there's these 5 buckets of human need. But Toi Sensei pointed out, I think even here in Ki in Daily Life, depending on where you live, if you're in the tropics and you can find shelter in the trees or the canopies, maybe all you need is food, air, and water. But Toi Sensei reminds us, that's not correct either. Because unless you have sleep, you can't replenish your ki. And so sleep and ki, actually ki is what sustains you more than anything else. But in the language of food, air, and water, people leave out 2 things that Toi Sensei thinks are critically important. Obviously, you're going to be alive by having, genki. You're going to have plus ki. However, when we go to bed, we often carry stress with us into our sleep. So Toi Sensei has a specific way of thinking about how should you fall asleep. And he describes it here so that you can get up correctly, extending plus ki. So what he says is when you go to sleep, it's almost like a form of self-hypnosis. But what he's going to ask you to do is review your to-do list the night before. Just the things that you're going to do, that you want to do to the best of your ability the next day. Now, it would be great if that to-do list were actually connected with what Toi Sensei calls your tenshoku, your mission. So you've heard me talk about that many times before, your mission, your tenshoku. That may take you a lifetime to discover what's your true tenshoku. But that's why, for example, in Living with the Wind at Your Back, there's 14 exercises, right? The very first exercise is called positive self-talk, or develop a personal development affirmation. That's your tenshoku. And that's what you're going to review in your mind before you go to bed and as soon as you get up. So I'm simply borrowing this first exercise from Living with the Wind at Your Back. It's exactly related to what Toi Sensei is talking about in these 3 sections. So why is that? Because when you go to bed with a clear understanding of what you're going to do the next day, you've reviewed it, you're conscious of it, and then just let it go. Forget about it, lay in bed, and just keep one point. Toi Sensei describes, so I won't review what he's already written in the chapter that I asked you to read. But you just keep one point until you fall asleep. Or if you still can't fall asleep, keep one point, just lay there, feel yourself naturally relaxing. And then maybe you can do some ki breathing. But the point is you fall asleep where your mind is like a bathtub that's rested for 10 minutes. When your mind is moving about all the things that you have to do the next day, or maybe just the stresses of the day, or you feel your mind is busy and you feel like you can't fall asleep, Toi Sensei is giving us a strategy, because that's totally normal. We all do it. But he's saying, you know what? You have way more control than you think you do. So he's always got a very empowering message, because the reason why this is the basic of the basics is Toi Sensei says we need to learn, if we're going to apply ki in daily life, we need to apply it not just with our conscious mind, but our subconscious mind. And our subconscious mind is the active mind when we're sleeping. And oh, guess what? The reason why your dreams are connected to the events and the circumstances of the previous day is because, where did I have that? In this in the book, you saw this chart. So the key parts are when you're transitioning from a wake state, then to a sleeping state where your subconscious mind is active, and then you wake up the next day. So Toi Sensei is basically saying there is this cycle of your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. And oh, by the way, you're sleeping 1/3 of your life. And oh, by the way, your subconscious mind is developing habits based on your dream life. So the reason why we tend to do things in daily life that might be reinforcing bad habits is because much of our behavior, as we all know, is driven by our subconscious mind, not our conscious mind. So Toi Sensei believes if you're really going to dedicate yourself to personal growth and personal transformation, you need to take a holistic look at it. And it's not just techniques. It's not just breathing and meditation. It's, are you sleeping well? Are you really training Shugyo 24/7, where you're beginning to transform your subconscious mind? How is that? Okay, you get up. Let's say you're all Genki. You wake up with you slept very well. You reviewed that to-do list, and now you're saying, okay, I'm going to go. Toi Sensei relates that in his personal life with the first moment of his real transformation process, which was, as a young teenager, his father dousing him with cold water. Imagine you were doused with cold water and you have that immediate, whoa. For Toi Sensei, that's an artificially induced feeling of, whoa, I'm extending ki. I went to bright alert. It may not be that comfortable, but you're extended. Toi Sensei's vision is, can you take that kind of extension, that feeling of aliveness, and actually live that way 24/7? I mean, that's huge. So the way that happens, he would say, is you can't just wake up with a spring in your step. You need to follow through. So a quick 1-minute segue there. When he would talk about the story of following through, he always talked to me about how much he did not like going to school at Keio University. He didn't like his studies in economics. He wanted not to finish. Why did he finish? His father made him, because his father said, when you start something, you do what you say, and no matter how you feel about it, your job is to complete your assignment, and after you're done, then you can shift. Toi Sensei used that against me all the time, because as you remember, when I was at Uchideshi, I wanted to quit my PhD program because I said, Sensei, what I'm really interested in is ki development. I just want to be a professional Aikido instructor. And you know the story, Toi Sensei would not let me quit. You have to follow through. He said, you know, I'll never be Dr. Tohei. You can be Doctor of Ki. You're going to be a Doctor of Ki. You have to finish. But this is all part of that narrative of finish what you start and go through life extending plus ki and taking responsibility for your whole self, your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. This can be like real serious medicine for anyone who suffered from trauma. Could be physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, just abuse. And that lifetime of experience could very much be in your subconscious mind. And it's very real. And Toi Sensei is compassionate to acknowledge that it's real. He doesn't just say, oh, have a plus mind and sweep all the bad stuff under the table. That, by the way, is exercise 13. You know, be in and with all your emotions. So Toi Sensei is just saying, it doesn't help to dwell on all the negativity. You might follow the 90-second rule. You feel something really bad, and this is a Tony Robbins thing. He says, give yourself 90 seconds to really, really have self-compassion. You know, be authentic with yourself. Understand it's real, it's painful, but at a certain point, and Toi Sensei would say, and very quickly, ask yourself, is this how you want to go through life? Is this the anchor that you want connected to your subconscious mind that you can't get out of your head because of maybe traumatic experiences? So Toi Sensei would say, over time, it's possible to transform your subconscious mind. It didn't get put there by the boogeyman. It is a product of your past experience. And by the way, in the Shokushu of the subconscious mind, Toi Sensei talks about your storehouse consciousness, your storehouse mind. That's right, that's called Alaya Vijnana. Yoga Buddhism, it's a famous doctrine. It's connected to sankharas that build up over time. Toi Sensei didn't want to talk about the language of Buddhism or Confucianism or Taoism, but it's all there because Toi Sensei didn't grow up in a vacuum. He read all this stuff. By the way, the very next chapter after these three is called like The Simple Life or something. That whole chapter is straight out of Sai Kon Tong, which Toi Sensei read so many times he had it practically memorized, and he would quote something from Sai Kon Tong practically every class. Anyway, so what's this triangle here? I'm looking, I've got like 5 more minutes. In order to get up well, which is to start your day with unification of mind and body and plus ki, you might start the night before. Because the other thing about sleep, having really good quality, high quality sleep, is that's when your ki is restored. By the way, that's a Taoist idea. During the day, when you're conscious and you're active, that's yang. And by the way, that yin and yang entered into his plus life shokushu. So Toi Sensei is thinking about this stuff all the time. But at night, yin, the restorative process of us, rebuilds. And Toi Sensei's language in these chapters is that's when your ki is replenished. So if you want strong ki and extend ki all day long, you need really good quality sleep. Leo, I'm looking at you with the new baby. How's your sleep? Just kidding. You don't have to answer that. Yeah, that changes completely. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, sleep. So you can take responsibility for improving the quality of your sleep. So recognize if when you go to sleep, your mind is really busy. If you try to pat the water of the bathtub to make it calm, we all know that doesn't work. That's doing too much. That's pushing an Aikido. It just doesn't work. So you have to calm yourself. Well, what if you're thinking about all the stuff going on in your life and all these changes and my job and am I going to have my job and what about transportation and food and wearing masks? Your mind is really, really busy and it's totally natural. But you can use all this different experience as though we're on a retreat. And you could say, you know what, I'm going to take this as an opportunity to now think about what is my day going to be like tomorrow? What are my goals? Maybe just pull out your day timer or your to-do list. Or maybe it has to do with your personal development affirmation, your tenshoku. Well, you say those things. You go over your to-do list. You recite your personal development affirmation before you go to bed. That's all your conscious mind. And then just say, just relax, just lay down and just keep one point and just feel how the evening is, the night is going to be so restorative that you're going to wake up all Genki with plus ki ready to go. That's putting really a suggestion into your subconscious mind at the critical moment before you fall asleep. Then when you wake up, it's no surprise. You say, wow, I had a really good night's sleep and I'm ready to go. And now you continue to extend ki throughout the day, noticing through all these changes, am I really keeping one point? Or has this happened and I've really become upper side? Is there a way for me to take my game to the next level and say, you know what, I am upper side, or you know what, I think I was just short there with my son. And then you can take a moment and say, you know, do you want to rephrase that? Do you want to go apologize? What do you want to do? But I'm just going to encourage you to see this as an opportunity to really not just say, you know what, I'm going to breathe and do meditation to help with my stress. If you took a real strategic approach to a significant lifetime transformation, the two bookends of this are exercise 1 and 13. Exercise 1 is that positive self-talk. That's whatever your tenshoku is. Maybe you want to improve your health. Maybe you want to improve your relationships. Maybe you want to improve your business. Maybe you want to improve whatever it is. Unifying your mind and body in daily life is the way to go. And Toi Sensei basically, as he always does, starts with the basics. So for me, the basic of personal transformation, we can do right now, because we have a completely new environment where we're turned upside down. We can examine ourselves in new ways because we're grounded at home. We have the time to reflect on all of our various relationships with our loved ones. And we can now reread these 3 chapters where Toi Sensei is saying this is a unit. If you want to get up well, you have to sleep well. If you want to sleep well, there are things you need to do before you go to sleep. And then recognize that throughout the day, the reason why you want to be plus as much as possible is because it's choice. So I'm going to end here, and just watching the clock, I'm going to end here and say, this is all about choices. Toi Sensei was all about choices, because for him, plus is true, minus is true. North is true, south is true. Right is true, wrong is true. Good is true, bad is true. So he's not saying, let's just be like an ostrich and ignore all the bad stuff and just, like a blind person, only thinking about the good. The other bookend is that exercise 13. Over time, through the calmness that you develop in breathing and meditation, there's an ample opportunity to see much more clearly the depth of those subconscious habits that still need to be purified. So Toi Sensei always uses that image of drop by drop. So you have a cup of tea, you do this for the first whole week. Well, that's only 7 clear drops of water in the cup of tea, and it doesn't look any different. It looks like the same color, it tastes the same. But Toi Sensei said numerous times in these 3 chapters, if you stick with it, maybe it'll take 6 months. But if 6 months of a clear drop of water into that tea, and pretty soon it's going to taste different, and it's going to look different, and it's going to be purified. And that's just how Toi Sensei thinks. We have a life. It's like right before us are the gates of a castle. It's the power of the universe that's been given to us by the key of the universe that sustains us at every moment. But unless we're willing to go through the gate and recognize just how much potential do we have, how much can we develop a strong mind, and he'll say strong willpower, which is actually what he calls Nen, now mind. Nen no Chikara, the power of your now mind, is the title of the shokushu that's called willpower. But anyway, all these things are connected. I'll pause now because we really are trying to keep this to 45 minutes. And I barely touched on the subconscious, but maybe with questions, I'll be able to explain it more deeply, or we can continue. If you find this conversation interesting, we can continue next week. So Rich, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you here.
Yeah, I've asked people to submit questions via the chat function in the app. And we got one from Jason from Austin, Texas. And he writes,
hey, Jason.
What's your key strategy for ingesting news about the pandemic?
What does it mean, ingesting news?
Jason, you want to chime in?
Yeah, you bet. So first of all, hi, and thank you, Sensei. So,
Oh, hey, Jason. I was looking
hi.
at, there you are.
Howdy. So what I mean by that is we're bombarded by a lot of opportunities to read about the news, read about current events, and it is, you talk about a drop by drop. This is a drop by drop, but perhaps not in a positive key direction, but it's constant and it doesn't stop. So it's one thing to view it and see it. It's another thing to read it. And then it's another thing to ingest it or make it a part of our lives. So at some point, it seems there's a practical piece to that. It's important to read about this, but it's another point, it can go from being a positive thing to a negative thing. And I'm just wondering how you manage that.
Yeah, so great question. Sorry, I was slow to understand the question. So what you're hearing is all true, and I would say we should be informed. So it's not drop by drop, it might be a fire hose. Have to control you. It doesn't have to make you lose one point. You're hearing this, the images that we see in hospitals and intensive care units, it's just like nothing we've ever seen our whole lives, and it's real. So it's minus, and it's bad, and it's true. But does it have to control you? So Toy Sensei would say, take the 90 seconds and recognize this is really bad and it's important for you to process, but you don't want to like let your life be controlled by these external events. Because you want to navigate to be the best you can be for yourself, even if it's for your self-defense. You need your health, you need a healthy immune system. So your rational mind can help you understand, if I just allow myself to go minus, 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 Toy Sensei would say, why are you doing that to yourself? So once you learn, that's the first half of Key in Daily Life. You learn how to keep one point. You understand the power of relaxation. You understand how to know if you're upper side or underside. Once you know from your own experience that that is a better way to live, better for relationships, better for health, better for stamina, better for sleep, then let that knowledge, your personal experience, inform you that why not choose plus and say, all that is true, but what can I do to serve my fellow person? I went through this, Jason, just, I'm doing this just like you guys. About a week and a half ago, I had a major shift where I recognized I was starting to feel, with this self-quarantine and all the people in the house, this idea of fear and isolation, and I can't go out. And I recognized, wow, this is all so negative. But once I recognized that the most positive thing I can do for my family is assume I'm asymptomatic positive. Because now I can go through life, I'm going to serve my family and my community by trying to follow these guidelines that the medical profession is telling us. Because if I act like I have it, I'm serving others. And immediately I felt now, if I act like I have it, and I do all the precautions as though I'm asymptomatic and I take no shortcuts, now I'm truly extending Ki in the service of others, which is the opposite of acting in fear and isolation and woe is me and I hope I don't get sick. So it's kind of a long answer, and I apologize for the length of the answer, and it took me a while to understand the question.
Thank you so much, Sensei.
I hope you're doing well, Jason.
Thank you very much. You too, Sensei.
Thanks.
Kirsten had a question, and maybe it makes sense, Kirsten, if you want to take yourself off of mute and ask it. I think it probably comes out better that way.
Sure, thanks, Sensei. So, hey, everyone. Hello, Sensei. Good to see you.
Hey, Kirsten.
Hey, so I'm curious what you would recommend so of course, we're all considering different options and different paths ahead of us and trying to plan well for our futures. That's a very cerebral activity. At least that's where I go. So do you have any recommendations for how to remain present while still planning ahead with clear eyes, as opposed to getting bogged down in fears or beguiled by hope?
Yeah, great question. Ileana and I were just talking about this earlier in a different context, but I think you've all heard me say, I guess I'm of an age to live at a perfect intersection between Tohei Sensei and Kaicho Sensei. As you can see in the readings that we've just done, Tohei Sensei is always about your mind, developing a strong mind. Everything was mind. Mind leads body. And Shinichi Sensei has recognized maybe the pendulum went way too far, because if your mind is too busy, it's like the bathtub that you just need to stop. Can you feel how busy your monkey mind is? And just now, can you feel that weight on the underside? So you just do a body scan in order to notice. It all comes down to noticing mentally and physically. If you can notice and if you can feel the difference, what does he say? You can self-correct. So the dojo is your life, and your life is your monastery. And if you think of your life as your monastery, guess what? You're always on an intensive retreat. There's no escape from the intensive retreat. So all of this is about learning strategies, and we're all different in terms of whether well, for example, the other thing that was in that was this chart. This subconscious, Tohei Sensei's subconscious is he sees the world, the filter through extend ki and mind. But what if the kind of person that you are is a person that's always in touch with your body and your feelings and your emotions, but that it's hard to control your intentions, your intentionality? Well, either way, all of this storehouse stuff allows us to see the object not as the object truly is, but the object as we experience it. So Tohei Sensei talks about differences in culture. He even talks about in these readings words. I might say a word and it means this to me because of my storehouse consciousness, but it might mean something completely different to Ileana. And suddenly now she has all these different meanings to something that I said. And now how do we find what's really going on here? Well, it may very much be that we have to get to exercise 13 to examine, why are we being triggered the way we are? Why are we reacting the way we are? And the reason why we know we're reacting is because we've noticed a shift in our emotion, a shift in our body, or a shift in our thoughts. So it all comes down to the simple task of, are you aware? Are you being mindful? And if you are, can you use your training to choose a better state?
Thank you, Sensei.
Thank you, Sensei.
Michael had a question on chat. How do we use plus key to manage relationships with those who maintain a negative attitude or are unwilling to admit their own faults or negative habits?
Number one, kaisho, put yourself in the place of your partner. You do that by listening, deep listening, really, really listen. And so that the other person is aware that you were listening, you might validate, repeat and confirm. Let them know. Because the reason why they might be stuck and so insistent is they just want to be validated. They want to feel like they're understood. And once they're understood and they know you've been willing to go around and really, really understand what does the worldview look like from their perspective, maybe they have a completely different storehouse consciousness than you do. So why don't you look at it in a fresh way? You might actually learn something and recognize, gee, I never thought about it that way. And once that other person recognizes that you're truly listening, you're putting yourself in their place, then just like katate, kosodori, kokionage, they're probably going to be willing to trade places with you because you started. And suddenly now they recognized, oh, well, I was validated, so and he listened to me, so maybe now there's an opportunity for you who are looking at the world differently. Like your filter already said, this person's negative, they're stuck, it's the problem. Well, maybe you listened and they began to understand that yeah, maybe they weren't thinking about this the way they could. Or you might recognize that you learned something and now both of you are going to look in a slightly different direction that neither one of you thought about to begin with. So that might be overly simplistic, but I certainly use that to overcome resistance for 30 years leading change with corporations. The very first step, the art of preparation, is the whole workforce needs to feel validated. That's why I spend 3 to 5 months doing nothing but strategically listening up and down the corporation across the world before I make any recommendations about what we need to do. Because unless I understand the mind of the company, and unless you understand the mind of the person with whom you're having this struggle, you're not going to get anywhere. So I just took a page right out of Toy Sensei, 5 Principles to Lead Others, and say, why don't we start by just listening, really, really quality listening.
Thank you, Sensei. David Bosco had a question. David, if you can unmute yourself and ask.
When we were talking about the selection among ourselves in our group, one of the young students said that she wakes up numerous times during the night. She's a little frustrated by that. Mm-hmm. And she was wondering whether the approach to sleep and getting to sleep that Tohei Sensei had would be a help for her. So do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Has she tried it yet?
Well, the first class, we just talked about it, and then everyone's trying it, and we're going to come back and do, like, as you said in the past, experimentation and see how it works.
Yes, yes. So the first thing you have to do, here's another whole thing that I just love about Toy Sensei's teachings. He's so authentic. He's going to tell you, you know, his whole pedagogy is him trying to share with us what his, like, as experienced life is like. And then he gives us techniques to try to learn what he's experiencing. And so in the same way, he came up with this strategy because of his own difficulty trying to be the best he could be. So I can tell you that my whole life, from the time I was at Uchideshi, we had to do this as Uchideshi because we were getting up at 4 o'clock and the first assignment was vacuum the office before class. And Toy Sensei would teach us how to do this. And I can tell you it works, but it does take practice. In the meantime, because I know we're out of time, but in the meantime, David, people are going to struggle with this. And so if you do wake up repeatedly in the night, do what Toy Sensei recommended. And that is, if you're having a hard time falling asleep, saying, oh, okay, I'm going to be awake, and go read a book, go do something productive. Recognize, don't fight sleep. If you do that, you're just patting the top of the bathtub again, making it worse. So just go do something else, because as Toy Sensei wrote about, eventually you're going to get tired. Eventually you're going to sleep. So it may take, I see the thumbs up, eventually you're going to be tired. And once you establish this rhythm, I could experience it as an Uchideshi, you're absolutely exhausted by the end of the evening because you just go, extended all day long and reacting around you all the time. It's just psychologically exhausting to truly empty yourself and, like, put the needs of Toy Sensei first. So falling asleep was never difficult. But if I do get up, just get up and do something else. Anyway, this could take some time, David, but I would encourage people to do it, because I would suspect, I don't know, but I would suspect for many of you, your sleep pattern has changed. And it probably is not as good as what it was. And it would be no surprise that your subconscious mind all night is being very busy with your ability to get the maximum kind of rest and replenishing your ki that Toy Sensei is talking about. And, you know, for him, he would see this very, very vividly, that literally when you're asleep, the universe is replenishing you, because he read the Tao Te Ching and Zhuangzi, and he believes, you know, the key of the universe is like the Tao. And the universe has rhythms because it's constantly changing. So success is how well can you adapt to the rhythms of the universe, which is why if the universe is always moving, you can't be stuck. So how do you become unstuck? Keep one point, extend key, follow the basic principles. But at a certain point, it's like the Nike commercial, you have to just do it. And that's where he would come down to, you just have to make a choice. You know, do you want a bright, happy life or a dark, gloomy one? He would teach a class, he'd say, who wants a, you know, which do you want, a bright, happy life, dark, gloomy? Oh, sensei, bright and happy, 100% of the time. When he gets 100% answer, that's what puts it in the bucket of a universal principle. How does a universal get to be a universal principle? When Toi Sensei asked these kinds of questions, and he'd say, when everybody says yes and nobody says no. And then he'd say, right is right, wrong is wrong. So for him, everything was like very clear cut. So there was no slack. Negative thoughts, negative things, negative people, okay, think about it, embrace it, have self-compassion, but then don't take so long to choose, how do you want to react to this, plus or minus? And he always says plus. Plus life is just extending key. Okay, I think we've gone 5 minutes over. I'd love to hear from you via email of topics that you'd like to discuss, or if you have more questions, or Rich, I don't know, was there one question that absolutely has to be asked? I can't see the question, so I don't know.
No, that was the last one. So I think the
Okay.
timing is perfect.
Okay, great.
Given the turnout today and the enthusiasm in the group, it sounds like this might be something we do again.
Well, thank you. But I'm, you know, I would like to make this responsive. Like I jumped all over David Bosco's idea. Like I had the idea, but didn't execute it because I was more interested in hearing from you. Then I heard what David did with his group and I thought, oh man, I'd like to do that. So I love even preparing for this because it forces me to just sit down and study what I like to study best, which is Toi Sensei and his teachings, and reflect on it and try to use these things for myself so I can improve as a father, as a husband, as a parent, as a teacher. And Toi Sensei has given us a path. So maybe you've never heard this before, but the basics of the basic of the basic of how to apply key in daily life, the Super Kaisho, is learning how to get up, learning how to sleep, and learning to take responsibility for not only your conscious mind, but also your subconscious mind that over time is it can be transformed. And that has to do with those subconscious habits that if we can let them rise to the surface, the depth of our calmness in key breathing and key meditation will surface those things that are hidden. But if you look strategically with your sleep and begin to pay attention to your dreams, if you dream or your sleep patterns, you can improve the quality of your sleep enormously just following the principles that you already know. Anyway, it's a pleasure to see all your faces, everyone. I'm sorry to do all the talking this time, but I do appreciate your questions and your faces. I'm seeing all of you, and thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Ladies and gentlemen.